that every man should bear rule in his own house, unquote. Women, this is in the Old Testament, are even viewed as dirty. And for proof, one could cite Job 25:4, which says, "How can he be clean that is born of a woman?" Leviticus 12:2 and 5 say, "If a woman has conceived seed and born a man-child," it's a baby boy, "then she shall be unclean 7 days. But if she bears a maid-child, a baby girl, then she shall be unclean 14 days, unquote. Apparently, female babies make women twice as dirty as baby boys, male babies. By saying women are just plain filthy, the Old Testament goes even further than the New Testament. That the Old Testament views women as a source of evil is shown not only by its attributing original sin to Eve's transgression, but to Ecclesiastes 7:26, which says, quote, "I discovered more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets, whose hands are chains. One who is pleasing to God will escape from her, but the sinner will be captured by her." In light of all the above, one can easily understand why Robert Ingersoll said on page 396 of Volume 1 in his works, quote, "As long as woman regards the Bible as the charter of her rights, she will be the slave of men." The Bible was not written by a woman. Within its lids, there is nothing but humiliation and shame for her. She is regarded as the property of man. She is made to ask forgiveness for becoming a mother. She is as much below her husband as her husband is below Christ. She is not allowed to speak. The gospel is too pure to be spoken by her polluted lips. Women should learn in silence, unquote. And later, on page 43 of volume 12 in his works, Ingersoll says the Bible, quote, "is not the friend of women." They will find that the writers of that book, for the most part, speak of women as a beast of burden, a serf, a drudge, a kind of necessary evil, as mere property. Surely a book that upholds polygamy is not the friend of wife and mother, unquote. And one can also see, from what we have said about the Bible's presentation of women, why one of the greatest leaders of the women's emancipation movement, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, she lived in the last century, made the following comments, quote, "The Bible and church have been the greatest stumbling blocks in the way of women's emancipation. The religious superstitions of women perpetuate their bondage more than all other adverse influences. I find nothing grand in the history of the Jews, nor in the morals inculcated in the Pentateuch." That's the first 5 books of the Bible. "I know," and this is the key point, one that all women should note well, "I know of no other book that so fully teaches the subjection and degradation of women," unquote. And finally, George Foote wrapped up this entire issue as well as anyone when he said, quote, "It will yet be the proud boast of women that they never contributed a line to the Bible," unquote. We'd like to conclude by reading a letter we received some time ago from Reynoldsburg, Ohio. The author states, quote, "The other day a Jehovah's Witness knocked on our door, alone surprisingly, and I invited him in. I didn't try to overpower him in one visit, and so I just politely asked him to resolve the Mary Magdalene problem in the four Gospels. He left and he didn't come back for about 2 weeks. I know that feeling. His answer or solution was very poor. Eventually he returned and continued his evangelizing, trying to show me the light," and he has the word light in quotes, "by supplying me with a book entitled You Can Live Forever in Paradise on Earth. Your periodical Biblical Errancy is a valuable aid in dissuading such individuals from their beliefs. However, I would like to ask you if you have a list of biblical verses that contradict the basic tenets or interpretations of the Jehovah's Witnesses in particular. I would definitely appreciate receiving such information. What I am pointing out is that your periodical has organized the basic contradictions and problems of the Bible, but not so as to contradict the basic tenets of any particular fundamentalist denomination." And he mentions the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Southern Baptists. "Perhaps as your periodical continues its publication, you will see fit to present biblical contradictions in a format that is aimed at one particular group." Unquote. In response to this, I said, "I'm glad to see that you confronted a Jehovah's Witness on his own turf and didn't avoid a dialogue. When they gave me the book you mentioned, I read and critiqued it from cover to cover. Some of the information was useful. As far as outlining problems in such a manner as to oppose particular groups is concerned, I intend to do that someday, but other activities are much more pressing. Except for matters pertaining to eschatology, the Trinity, and a few other key areas, most of the basic beliefs of the witnesses are in agreement with those of fundamentalist Christianity. So you might as well direct the same points to them that you would direct to the other biblicists." That completes our presentation, and please join us later for the 42nd edition of Biblical Errancy Commentary, when we'll continue showing why the Bible is nothing more than the flawed composition of some fallible human beings. Thank you for listening.